Gold is back. Maybe, maybe not. The Fed's going to taper. Does it matter? Zillow should not be in the investing business. We'll talk Zillow. We'll talk food shortages. We'll talk Prince Andrew. JFK Jr. might be alive. A whole lot to get to. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. And this is episode 142 of Bizarro World. Mr. Hodge, how goes you today?
Busy as you are, Gerardo. Looking forward to being away for a week, chasing elk in Montana, and otherwise enjoying all-time record highs in stocks and some commodities, and excitement that goes along with that. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Oh, hold on. I think JFK Jr. is here. Hold on a second. Oh, nope. Wasn't him. Sorry. I thought he was a few days late. No, look, I'm doing well. Things are good. Things are busy. Things are productive. The markets are very favorable. Inflation profits, as you call them, continue to add up. Things are great. Things are great. Did you hear that story about the QAnon people in Dallas that were out there in the rain and the cold weather, and they were waiting for JFK Jr. over by the grassy knoll where Kennedy was killed? Did you read that?
I can only imagine. No, I did not. Did he or the other gunman show up?
Well, Senior did not show up. Junior was scheduled to show up, according to them. He was going to come back and let everyone know he was alive. Now, this wasn't like a ragtag group of 5 people. There were hundreds of people that showed up in Dallas expecting JFK Jr.'s return. And so, they believe that Trump is battling a Satan-worshiping cabal that traffics children for sex. And while you know how I feel and I know how you feel about sex trafficking and anything that is non-consensual or criminal as it relates to trafficking of women or men or children, but this particular group, it's a fascinating group to me, and it's fascinating for this reason. Of course, all of us should be vigilant about sex traffickers, right? See one, say something. That's the one where I agree. Like, absolutely, tell on them and go get those assholes, right? Whoever that is. I just don't understand how it morphs from, hey, we're going to be very vigilant about the trafficking of kids, whether it's politicians or whether it's the Epsteins or whether it's the Prince Andrews or whoever it is, right? Maybe Bill Gates, I don't know. Kidding, Bill, kidding. Don't turn off the chip. But how it morphs from that into JFK Jr.'s coming back and, we're going to wait for him out in the rain. And then to have hundreds of people actually show up believing this. It truly is a bizarre world out there. I don't know how else to put it, but I thought this was one of those Onion headlines, right? Where it's just too bizarre to believe, but it happens, so it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I think people love stories. It's what allows people to organize, and always has, frankly, going back to in the biblical sense of it. And so that's the root of how it could go from one thing to another. The story changes, and people continue to believe it because of our inherent nature to be, susceptible to stories. And so hundreds of people showing up for that is incredible, though not unbelievable, because hundreds of people show up to dress up like furry animals at organized events and things like that. So to each their own. I think things also get over amplified, right? And so you see this and you're like, man, it's just like looking at a train wreck, right? And so it gets amplified because everybody wants to look at it because it is so bizarre. And we'll talk about the Epstein stuff later, I'm sure, but I'm sorry they didn't get fulfilled or seek what they were looking for there.
I'm sorry for them as well. And if there's any QAnon listeners out there, this is not a shot at you or your group. I think the mission statement is noble. Keep putting pressure on the sex traffickers out there. But some of the other stuff, you got to know it looks a little off from this side of it. Anyhow, everything's still awesome in the stock market, Nick. I know that you and I talked about the money that you have that is managed, quote unquote, professionally by others. And you, of course, do extremely well for yourself. We've done very well. We've been fortunate in that sense. We've positioned well. I really hope that the group that is managing your money is starting to outperform, because every week is a record level in the major indices. And if they're not keeping up, Nick, like somebody else's account.
I mean, you got to get in there, and we've been preaching that you got to do it for yourself, especially when things that are starting to perform now are different than they have been in the past couple of years, right? Algorithmically programmed is how these funds and managers look at things, whereas things are happening now that weren't happening before. Whatever that is, the inflation, the commodity prices going up, the Fed trying to change stance now and beginning to taper, and things starting to do things that didn't historically happen, right? Like that you've talked about for a long time, like stocks continuing to go up alongside rates, and gold having a little show of it today, and so. It's all very new territory, and you got to be nimble and be able to go fast where the profits are being made, and institutions, I guess, simply aren't made to do that.
Let's talk about the move in gold today. It was as high as 1823, and today's move was interesting to me. And listen, I know the gold bugs it closed at 1816. I know the gold bugs are frustrated. I know gold speculators are frustrated. I did an interview with INN, and I said, I'm frankly loving this environment and hope it lasts another month or so. So I can, kind of double down on my favorite positions, right? There's names out there that, just like the uranium names, when they were all bottoming, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when these stocks were going to go up 3, 4, 5, 6 fold. And that's happened. And so I see the same thing happening in the gold space. And I think the opportunity right now is incredible. I am encouraged by the move today because it happened simultaneously with the dollar soaring to more than a 1-year high after the jobs report, right? And it did pull back a bit, but that's always been, to me, the precursor to new all-time highs that'll be sustainable is an elevated dollar. It doesn't have to break new highs, just an elevated dollar and rates rising alongside the major U.S. indices and cryptos and Michael Jordan shoes and everything else that goes along with that. That was Yahoo Finance, by the way. So, but no, look, everything else that goes along with that. And so I think today's move was interesting. It happened on a Friday. It happened during Fed week, where the Fed's talking about tapering, and typically, you get the beat down when you hear the news that the Fed is going to taper. It didn't happen that way. Silver outperformed as it usually does to the upside when it's headed up, and we all know it does it to the downside when it's headed down. But thoughts on the move today?
Well, I was going to talk about getting positioned on the equity side of things, because I think whether gold takes off from here and breaks out or it settles back down below $1,800, there's a real chance to get positioned here in the end of the year on two fronts. I was going to talk about one is the tax loss front, and there's some quality names that you can pick up, smaller companies I'm talking about that have but still quality, that have had a rougher go of it simply because gold has had a rougher go of it this year, but that are liquid and that have good projects and that typically bounce back. I think you were going to do an interview about that here in the coming weeks, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you were still planning on doing that or not, but There's tons of names you can mention. I happen to be writing about gold mining this week simply because it's in the Foundational Profits portfolio. It has an NYSE listing, has a lot of projects, a large resource base, and isn't shy about marketing. So it makes for a good tax loss candidate. And that's sort of one way to think about gold right now. And then the other way is larger companies. I was talking about a month or two ago, starting to like peck away at Kinross and stuff like that. And I bought that all the way down. And so I was actually looking just today, and I'm up like 6% on my Kinross, and I've only owned it for a little tiny bit, right? Like easy work if you can get it. And so what I started to do is, peel out of a little bit of that and see where else can I put that, right? Like what hasn't come up like Kinross has in the past, I don't know, 30 or 60 days, like a Newmont or a Wheaton that is still been beaten down, and then positioning in those larger companies that haven't moved yet. And I don't know, that's how I'm just looking at gold stocks headed into the end of the year. The gold price, the move today is quote unquote surprising. We'll see if it's sustainable or if it's just a one-off. I'm not paid enough to make those decisions.
You're not paid enough to make those decisions, huh, Nick? Does it matter if the Fed tapers? I mean, is that? I mean, I was wrong. I thought the Fed wasn't going to taper. I also didn't think it was going to be consequential. So I guess I was half right and half wrong, right? But yeah, I actually was surprised that the Fed decided to announce, and keyword announce. It hasn't started to taper yet. But is it consequential? Does it matter? Should we care? Everything's awesome, right?
The market didn't seem to care, right? Stocks didn't throw a taper tantrum. I said the one thing that might give them reserves was the jobs report. We got a good jobs report. The economy continues to be growing. So I think at least until, we get into 2022, when the year over year comparisons aren't as rosy because you're not coming off such a low baseline, then I think it might not be so consequential here for a quarter, maybe two.
I think the other thing the markets were encouraged by was the fact that it appears that Jerome is going to keep Jeroming, right? I know that Joe Biden met with Chairman Jerome Powell and the governor, Leo Brainard. I'll butcher that name as I usually do. But look, it seems like everybody's throwing their weight, with the establishment, right? Janet Yellen came out and said she wants to keep J&J in. It appears that's the direction it's going to go. And, I wonder if some of the reaction in the gold price was in part because it did happen, it wasn't a first thing in the morning type of thing. What was in part, the market, kind of seeing, reading the tea leaves, right? I mean, nothing's going to change, taper or no taper. A rate rise is not in the cards anytime soon. And if Powell is back, then, Powell and Yellen, what the policy is going to be. It's not going to change unless the bond market forces a change.
Yeah, we're going to see when it happens. And like I say, I don't know when that's going to be.
Energy. You've done really well with energy. That's the one sector that as I've said here before, I stay away from because I don't feel qualified in a professional sense to speculate, and certainly not qualified in a professional sense to recommend, companies and names. I can bet a structure. I can bet a management team. The assets, it just doesn't click for me the way the other metals do. But thoughts on energy and then where that's at. I see Biden complaining that, OPEC and Russia are to blame for the energy crisis as it's now being framed. I always worry when I start hearing that type of verbiage, because that tends to be a precursor to situations that could lead to war. And so when I look at that and I look at China urging families to stockpile food and essentials because they fear winter shortages, the populace doesn't really do well with hunger historically, and rightfully so. And this has a very similar feeling to me as the Arab Spring did back in 2011-ish, right? 2010, 2011, the last time we saw energy prices like this, and the last time that we saw it affect the bottom line as it relates to poverty and access to essentials and food. And now that's coupled with COVID-related shortages and bottlenecks that don't seem to be alleviating anytime soon. And so when I look at all those things and connect the dots there, I would not be surprised if we had an incident, an international incident, relatively soon, to kind of distract from the underlying issue, which, again, I hate to beat a dead horse and sound like a broken record, but it's central bank policy creating the most wealth inequality I have ever seen in my lifetime. Thoughts on that, Nick? I know it's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a ton there, Gerardo. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in China. They're announced this week that they want to build some new nuclear reactors. So they're trying to get some longer term, sustainable, cheaper energy go. And I don't see really a break in energy prices, anytime soon, whether or not that's, OPEC or demand related. It's being inflation driven. I was telling you that recently. And I was listening to Bloomberg and I was laughing because the guy was asking the analyst if, he was looking at the supply side or the demand side. And I was just laughing because it didn't really matter because it's just inflation driven, right? And so is it going to cause a rise up or an Arab Spring, I'm not sure. We were talking about recently that there's so many black swans out there that they're not even black swans. Like they just sort of come and go and they're dealt with and they flare up. So is it a good time to own fertilizer inputs and companies that can pass on the cost of food inflation and things like that? Yeah. Do I spend time worrying about flare-ups and stuff like that? I used to more, but not as much now. I more think about the market implications of stuff like that. And so I guess you can see sort of, you talk about an international incident. I mean, obviously the U.S. and China is on a collision course. I don't know what the timing of that looks like. And you see little stuff pop up all the time that would have in previous years been a much bigger deal. Like, I don't know, seeing UFOs, for example. But even as it relates, more to what we're talking about, like there was like a U.S. nuclear sub that, hit bottom in the China Sea, the South China Sea, which is like contested waters the other week. And China's asking questions basically like, the fuck were you doing there? And why did you run aground? And so, that's, you don't see that stuff like on the evening news so much. And it's definitely in the background. And so I don't know if that answers any of your questions at all, but the inflation is real, obviously. I mean, we got to say that. And so what I see now is a lot of backpedaling. And I think this might be what you're alluding to, a lot of covering it up and trying to distract from it, right? Because it hasn't been so it hasn't been so transitory.
Agreed. 100%. You touched on China and you touched on nuclear, so we have to talk uranium. I hate to be the person that sold uranium stocks a month ago. I mean, China's planning at least 150 new nuclear reactors. And again, this isn't a short-term trend where we're going to have, a 1 year or 2 year spike in prices followed by another 10-year bear market. The dynamics for this market are dramatically different than they were pre-Fukushima, right? And so when I look at lithium, when I look at the trend there, when I look at nuclear and uranium, it's hard. It's hard for me to not want to pound the table about the opportunities to create some real wealth for yourself in this market. We talked about that last week. I don't want to get into that, again, but there's just so many ways out there to make money right now. And there's so many mega trends, right? There's so many super cycles that are that are just running simultaneously, that again, this is not the time to not do anything, right? So I hope that some of what, we rant and talk about here, and the little advice that we give here on the podcast, I hope that some of that translates into at least a discussion for people out there about ways to diversify their revenue streams, because that is something in my lifetime that, I've done extremely well with, whether it's, real estate or mining stocks or, you name it, any number of things. So yeah, that's the long-winded way of saying, uranium and nuclear and lithium and all of these metals that are necessary inputs for the energy revolution. That's not a fly-by-night type of trend. That is something that will continue, and hopefully people can make some money off of it. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I would relate it, I guess, to lithium, especially the Chinese, right? Because it comes back to solar roads and how you get those done, right? Like the Chinese have a plan, right? Of course they do. And so as they build out their, rare earths capacity, lithium refining capacity, battery cell manufacturing capacity, et cetera, they've gone down the supply chain of inputs and started buying up the companies, right? The Gangfangs, the Zijin Minings, for example, when Western, mid-tier producers, explorers, and developers are bought out, I won't say more often than not, although it seems like that, the Chinese are in the mix, right? One of my earliest lithium wins, the company was sold to a Chinese outfit, right? And recently you see the bidding war for Millennial erupt between a Chinese outfit and now Lithium America coming into it. And so it's, at least in the lithium space, larger Western companies starting to realize that they have to bid for these assets, or else the Chinese are going to buy them up. And that's going to be the case with uranium as well. And to some extent it has been, like, even going back to, like, look at who came in to partner with fission uranium, for example, when the world realized how big the Triple R deposit was going to be. And so, and certainly they're doing this in Africa in more nefarious, ways, financing countries and things like that to take control of the assets. But in uranium specifically, now there's going to be, I think, even more Chinese call it pressure or bidding in the mix for these Western uranium assets. And that can only be further good for the price of the smaller uranium stocks. Agreed.
Tesla is planning to open a factory to produce battery manufacturing equipment in Ontario. Can you imagine the erections right now from the Canadian brokerages? I sense a lot of wetness and a lot of erectness in Canada right now. I mean, you can't make this up, Nick. Can you imagine the stories that are being spun right now about the next Tesla takeover target? We're only 100 kilometers from the new Tesla factory. They've been to site. That's all we can say. I can see it now, and I, for one, am going to delight in watching this happen. Be careful out there, y'all. I can see the stories happening already. I know the way your mind works, Nick.
It'd be nice if you were already positioned in some Canadian hard rock lithium assets.
Wouldn't it? Especially real assets that might actually deliver some real results and real deposits, and actually have a story to tell, and actually have the interest of companies like a Rio Tinto or something like that. Yeah, that would be nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Y'all are going to have to subscribe for that one. But Mark, I know you listen. Mark B. I won't say his whole last name because I don't know if he's supposed to listen, but I know you listen, buddy. And I know that I know you must have some ideas. So if you have a couple of shells out there somewhere near where this factory is going to be, give Nick and I a call. Maybe we can do something together.
It's funny.
Let's talk about Zillow. Zillow, not the best traders in the world. Nick, did you read that story? They lost $381 million because they overpaid for houses. So the reason that trend accelerated is because they were overpaying, right? We know that now. And so, the bummer there, of course, is that there's real life consequences to making bad business decisions. That's the way capitalism is supposed to work anyway. And so now Zillow is shutting that division down after losing $381 million in one quarter. That's leading to a 25% layoff of its workforce. And so, we all get stuff wrong. I get stuff wrong. Everybody gets stuff wrong. But $381 million worth of wrong in 3 months on homes in this market, it takes a special kind of something to pull that off.
Yeah, what was the special kind of something? I did see the headline. I wasn't aware of the scale. How did they let it go on for so long? Why didn't they pinch it off?
Well, this is the thing. It didn't go on for long. It wasn't very long. I mean, they just started paying top dollar and above dollar, and I guess we're not liquid enough to ride out a quarter of a pause in rising prices. I'm in the middle of a refinance here in my house in Round Rock, just because I can't believe what they're willing to give me. And I know what I can do with it. So I'm like, sure, I'll take a mortgage. Why not? Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's look, I feel for the people that are getting laid off. I was very critical of the Zillows and the BlackRocks and the hedge funds that came into the space a year ago when they started doing this. I ranted about it, and I meant it, because of what it did for first-time home buyers and people that maybe, weren't the best off economically. It made it really, really tough to compete. If you're looking to buy a first-time home, it's, if it's you and your girlfriend, or you and your boyfriend, or, you come to this country and you're looking, to start something and, start kind of carving something out for your family, and you're competing with a hedge fund. And now we know they were not only competing with, hedge funds, they were competing with companies like Zillow that were overpaying grossly. And so this is the way that capitalism is supposed to work. Hopefully there's some balance in that market. But yeah, Zillow gone wild. What can you say?
I was going to say I sent some class actions, but I see they're already starting.
They are already starting is correct, sir. You know what else is starting? Prince Andrew's legal team. They've been put on notice. Talked about this a few weeks ago, excuse me. I was curious to see if he was going to respond to the subpoena. They responded to the subpoena, and the judge has advised his legal team that he's got 2 months to prepare for a court hearing to try to get the judge to throw out the lawsuit brought by sexual assault accuser. I'll leave her name out of it, just out of respect to the alleged victim here. And so I will be looking forward to seeing if this moves forward. Jeff Epstein's girlfriend and Madame and Pimp is locked up. We haven't heard much from her. There's pictures of this victim and Prince Andrew when she was 17. That is documented. And I saw a documentary on Netflix maybe 6 months ago, and they interviewed many alleged victims, and it was gross to say the least. And I hope everybody just has, whatever they have coming, whatever they've earned in life through their actions. I hope they get it in spades. Yeah.
Oh, well, and it's, yeah, absolutely. And it's deeper than that. Last week I had mentioned, Leon Black was back in the news, saying that this was all a conspiracy to break it down, to bring him down, and that he was, going to go back to court with his accuser, who was all, tied back to this Epstein stuff. And then you had Jess Staley come back in the news just in the past week, who was been investigated long ago and faded for a bit. He's the head of Barclays, and it comes back that he ended up having pressure put on him to step down by the British authorities. And so as we've long said, this is a real thing. It goes deeper than you think or like to imagine. And what's really sick is that, these are the people who make decisions that impact so many others, right? And sometimes in obviously ways that only enrich themselves. And so, like Barclays, for example, was one of the banks who's known to have manipulated LIBOR, for example, which cost people billions or more dollars and manipulated loans and mortgages that were tied to that benchmark. And so, not only are they the ones who are the quote unquote rulers of the world, but then they're also doing allegedly or whatever this stuff, but everyone sort of knows, right? It's like getting out there in the open. And so that's why people are upset, I think, is one of the real reasons. And one of the reasons that alternative currencies and things are popping up, because those players, right? The Leon Blacks, the Prince Andrews, the Jess Staley's, right? They've bastardized the current system, right? And if there's not a way to fix it, or if they won't let it go easily, then it's going to be rebuilt, right? And decentralized and deinstitutionalized. And these are the broader themes we talk about all the time. And this is really, hits at the core of the overarching reason why, is that they think that they're the rulers of the world and above the law, and everyone else is tired of that.
Well said. Well said. And again, when you couple that with food shortages, when you couple that with the wealth inequality that we're seeing, when you couple that with inept and corrupt government, fourth turning type of stuff and inflection point type of stuff. And I said it before on this podcast, if you can make preparations to, be able to protect yourself and sustain yourself and your family, it's not the worst idea in the world. It's advice that I'm taking and have taken myself. I won't speak for Mr. Nick Hodge, but knowing Mr. Nick Hodge, I'm pretty sure that Nick could make it a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months if it really hit the fan. And I would advise everyone, if you haven't already done so, maybe not the worst idea in the world, right?
That's it. It's never a bad idea to have a plan B and, a little bit of extra of everything. And just like you have 5 or 10% of your portfolio in gold, you hope you never have to use it, but it's nice to have it if you're able. And in the meantime, positioned to take advantage of what's happening in the market because of that stuff. So sort of like a twofold approach.
Absolutely. Let's talk market week ahead. You'll be out next week, Nick. And so obviously I want to get you on out of here and let you get to it. There's lots to do before you take your trip. Happy hunting, by the way. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. We're very much looking forward to it. I'll try to keep an eye on the market. If I can get some cell service in the evenings, we'll see. What are you looking forward to in the week ahead?
You talked about Cucho Copper last week. We talked about it in New Orleans. I think anybody that kind of followed and has followed that tick for the last year has done well. Even if you just bought it, because you heard the podcast from New Orleans, that's just touching brand new 52-week highs today. Hitting $1.05 at one point, closed at $1.03. I think it still has substantial upside. And we got a feasibility study that's due any day now. Maybe next week, maybe the week after, not quite sure, but I'll definitely be looking forward to that. Lithium Americas. I wrote it up at 21, and it took me a couple of days to get it out. And by the time I did get it out, it was at 24 and 25, and here it is today, closing at 52-week highs at 32.50, right? 32.67. So touched the 52-week high today. That's gone extremely well. And then I guess my sleeper, kind of under the radar trade I should have maybe taken some profits on, but I actually believe in the story and the asset. So I want to trade around results, not around, marketing, is Patriot Battery Metals, which, has pulled back from, the 75-cent range down to like the 25, 26-cent range. Not a coincidence that a financing that I helped, that I participated in and helped raise money for, just came free trading, right? So you can see where the volume and the selling and people that front run that, where that happened. But, that financing was at 16 cents, came with a full warrant at 25, stocks at 25 cents. I think it's a heck of an entry point. There's a reason why I didn't take profits. I think we start seeing results from their 25-kilometer lithium trend in Canada. I think within the next week or two, if the labs cooperate. So, those are three names that, I look at every day, and it's not a coincidence that it's, copper, lithium, gold, right? Those are the commodities that you get exposure to there, with a touch of zinc on the Cucho side.
I told you about Playboy last week or the week before. It was at
and there's sticky ecosystem.
It was last week, so there you go. It was at like $24 or $25, and it too has broken out to above 30. So you got your money's worth for a free podcast. But more importantly, earnings panned out exactly as described in previous issues of this podcast, namely that they're good and carried stocks to all-time highs. Small caps are breaking out as advertised. And so looking for plays there. And I continue to buy oil stocks. And so I think that's a place to look. Like we touched on earlier, I think energy continues to go higher. It's been the best performing sector of the market for the past 12 months. And that story is just starting to cascade over and attract more people, not just oil, but lithium and uranium, as we discussed. And so anyway, I look forward to uranium stocks breaking out to new highs. They knocked on the door a bit this week to try to do that. And I think they'll get there in the next couple of weeks or months here.
Agreed. I'll leave you all with one of my favorite, not funny headlines that just broke here from the Washington Post. Nicaragua's Ortega cruises to re-election after jailing 7 potential opposition candidates. It's a bizarro world out there, Nick. I don't know what to tell you. That's a great way to win an election, though, if you can pull it off. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 142 of Bizarro World. Nick, happy hunting. Some words of wisdom before you go.
No, get after it. Next week I'll be gone. You'll have a guest here. Hopefully, I think we can pull it off. And I look forward to enjoying the week with my dad and taking the week off. Have a good week.
Have a good week, everyone. I'll tease the guest. He's a gentleman that made 70 to 75 times his money in the crypto space. And we're going to talk crypto next week for those of you interested. Have a great week, everyone.
See ya.